Now, let me tell you a little bit about Janis. Maybe some of this you know already, but some may be new to you. She has been a member of Dawn Heights Unitarian Congregation since 2011. She served on the board and is active on several committees. She is a UU envoy through the UU office at the United Nations. And Janis is our very first lay chaplain. I'm sorry, Janis is a lay chaplain and is now our very first lay minister at Dawn Heights. And this is an exciting development for us, given that there's a shortage of Unitarian ministers and we don't have a lay ministry movement formed yet in Canada. And this could be the start of it. She's registered, she's a distinguished Toastmaster with many speeches under her belt and a former adult trainer. Janis is a singer and songwriter, as you know, a member of Dawn Heights Singers in various bands. And her favorite Unitarian principle is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And perhaps this is why she's chosen to speak to us today about the fate of the world. So let's welcome and turn things over to Janis Daly, lay minister.
Thank you, Sheila. Wow, what a build-up there. And I know you can't see me very well, but I'm wearing this wonderful new outfit that I was hoping to stand at a lectern and share with you, but that day will also come. So, is it the end of the world? Is it? People talk about the apocalypse as if it's a done deal, but apocalypse can have several meanings. Now, according to dictionary.com, it could mean Jewish or Christian writings that appeared between 200 BC to 350 AD that were assumed to reveal an ultimate divine purpose. It could also mean a prophetic revelation where the forces of good permanently triumph over the forces of evil. It could be any revelation, which really is a revealing or a prophecy. And lastly, the one that we're most concerned with, any universal or widespread destruction or disaster. As Unitarians, we can be very dismissive of such beliefs instead of following the science. We choose to follow the science, we educate ourselves, and we do our own observing. But at times, we also get discouraged as a faith that's interested in helping the world and doing social justice. How do we live up to our guiding 8 principles, in particular, number 6, that goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all? And number 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. Wars, famines, flood, climate change, displaced persons, migrants, fossil fuels. What do these words mean to you? In this media age, bad news travels quickly, while good news doesn't even make the back page. And worse, we are surrounded by fake news, requiring us to weed out the genuine from the fake. You know, I'm no futurist, but I am interested in discussing these issues we have faced. And we should realize we've been facing them yesterday, we face them today, and I'm positive we will continue to face them tomorrow. And sometimes I feel overcome by fear. Fear that the world is not changing for good. Fear that the rights of women are being eroded. Fear of more countries being run by dictators. Fear of our great ship Earth failing to face the changes and challenges that must be made to protect and save our only home. But I am convinced, absolutely convinced, that we are not living at the end of times. The Earth has always faced challenges and it's always survived. We are, however, living in a time of correction and quick changes. We will start by talking about the past, move to the present, and then the future of end of the world ideas that have been with us. And let's start with a sampling of the past. Christian authorities believed in 1000 AD that there would be a second coming of Jesus. In anticipation of this, many people disposed of their belongings, they left their jobs, and they abandoned their homes. When the date came and went and nothing happened, folks thought they simply miscalculated Jesus's age and decided the world would end in 1033 AD instead. Wrong again. Then there was Johann Stoffler, a respected German mathematician and astrologer, who predicted that a great flood would cover the world on February 25th, 1524, when all the known planets would be in alignment with Pisces, a water sign. Hundreds of pamphlets were issued about this flood, and it created a general panic. Count von Egelheim, a German nobleman, actually built a 3-story ark. There was light rain on the day of the predicted flood, but there was no flood. The Bible calls 666 the number of the beast, and many Christians in the 17th century in Europe feared that the end of the world would be in the year 1666. They looked to the Great London Fire, which lasted from September 2 to the 5th of 1666, destroying most of the city, 87 churches, and 13,000 houses. 10 people died, and although property damage was extensive, it was not the end of the world. We come to May 19th, 1780, and a religious group known as the Shakers thought Judgment Day had come because of a gloomy day. The sky was strangely dark, probably caused by a mixture of smoke from forest fires and a heavy fog. Nothing happened, but the Shakers continued to spread their message that celibacy was the path to redemption. Unfortunately, their deliberate celibacy resulted in no children, and their faith died out with them, although you can still buy Shaker-style furniture today. You can see that there are a whole bunch of these things that have happened in the past. Jehovah's Witnesses in 1876, the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses, Charles Taze Russell, predicted that Christ would return in 1914. When that prophecy failed, the society predicted at least 7 other dates when Armageddon would occur. Clearly, they were all wrong, but they are still distributing religious pamphlets and refusing blood transfusions. And you think it doesn't happen in the scientific world. We do see that with religions, that a lot of them, despite making these claims, then pivoted their religions into something else that are still continuing today. But science also has made a few mistakes. We find in 1974, astrophysicist John Gribben and Stephen Plageman published The Jupiter Effect. It claimed that on March 10th of 1982, the planets would align on the same side as the sun, creating gravitational effects that would lead to catastrophic earthquakes. Nothing happened. These two astrophysicists then wrote a book called The Jupiter Effect Reconsidered. And I'm sure many of you will remember the excitement around Y2K. It was a fear that computers would not understand the year 00, instead reading it as 1900 instead of 2000. This was going to cause our technological universe to collapse. Well, January 1st, 2000 came and went. Computers still worked, but many people bought new, improved computers. These are just a few of the many, many instances when humans believed the world was coming to an end. Predicting the end of the world is a risky endeavor. It's also interesting to note that many religious predictions did not come about. Many, as in all so far. But now we come to the present. There are numerous things we worry about, and I'm going to do my top 3 picks. The first one is pandemics. Coronaviruses belong to a class of viruses known to affect mammals and birds, causing respiratory and intestinal illnesses. They can jump from animals to humans and spread. This is partly occurring as human destruction of natural habitats of wild animals leads them and us together. These viruses can then jump from animals to humans. Our modes of travel by airplane increase the likelihood that these diseases will spread worldwide. We've already experienced SARS and MERS, and now COVID-19. What we can see with COVID-19 is over 6.5 million people got it. Over 6.5 million people have died because of it. And in Canada, over 4 million people have got COVID-19, and the current death toll is 44,740. That amounts to more deaths than all the Canadians that died in World War II. And the damage to economies, industries, loss of jobs, shrinking of workforces, severe overwork of those deemed essential, those pandemic heroes such as nurses and store clerks, and changes to our working culture, masking, vaccines, working from home, yada, 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 have caused sudden cultural shifts that we still haven't processed. It's so fresh. We do have the model of the Spanish flu of 1919. We see that during the Spanish flu, 1/3 of the world population was affected. That's 500 million people at that time, and there were 50 million deaths. But the difference is we've had over 100 years to analyze Spanish flu. COVID-19 only began in 2019, and we are still learning about it. The other fear floating around is that scientists working in biotechnology are creating germs and viruses, and that these pathogens could get out of a high security lab and spread or be deliberately spread by bioterrorists. There are solutions. Dr. Aaron Bernstein of Harvard led a task force that pointed out 3 very important things that they identified that could prevent future pandemics. We know that the spillover of pathogens that can cause pandemics occurs from livestock operations, wildlife hunting and trade, land use change and destruction of tropical forests, expansion of agricultural lands, especially near human settlements, and rapid, unplanned urbanization. In his research, he found the cost of preventing a pandemic is 2% of the cost that we've been paying for COVID-19. Imagine that, 2%. What his team is advocating is prevention. And it's interesting to note that the solutions mentioned above indicate that we need to lessen the effects of climate change. While we will continue to see new treatments for COVID-19 and vaccines, these are reactive measures after the fact. Prevention is a far, far better solution. The second one that I identified was a global nuclear war or nuclear accident, which could lead to a nuclear winter, the start of a new ice age. But is this a true risk? Only 9 countries have nuclear weapon capacity: Russia, the United States, China, France, the UK, Pakistan, India, Israel, and North Korea. Now, each of these countries claim they have nuclear weapons as a deterrent to war merely by the threat of nuclear weapons. But despite that deterrent, the country that released atomic weapons was the United States on Japan in World War II. Hiroshima on August 6th and Nagasaki August 9th, 1945, killing mostly civilians. The bombs we have today are bigger and more dangerous, and radioactive fallout does not respect borders. There are scientists that are urging the United States to refuse the right to use nuclear weapons first, and they can't get an agreement to do such a thing. They are also concerned about the sole, unchecked authority of a nuclear attack that can be determined by the president alone. Think about what that could mean. We should remember that President Truman alone made the decision over the moral reservations of his Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, General Dwight Eisenhower, and a number of the Manhattan Project scientists to drop bombs on Japan. Let us continue to urge countries that have not signed the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons to do so, and join the 84 countries that already have signed that treaty. But what about nuclear stations around the world? What if extremists decided to blow one up intentionally? Well, these power stations are the energy released during a nuclear fission or a fusion reaction that is termed nuclear energy. It generates electricity by the heat produced by the nuclear reactor. Locally, we have a nuclear power plant at Pickering, and we take this power source mainly for granted. And while nuclear power has been saved, there are long-term major effects, namely disposal and management of nuclear waste, decomposition of uranium into harmful subatomic masses, and accidental leakage. It makes construction difficult and expensive, and many of us have seen how the price tag is always much, much higher than predicted. And what about accidents at nuclear power plants? We had Chernobyl on April 26, 1986. Fukushima on March 11th of 2011 occurred because of a 9.0 scale earthquake, which damaged the plant and then was followed by a tsunami that caused further damage. And today we see the ongoing war between Russia and the Ukraine. Russia seized the spent nuclear fuel and radioactive waste facilities next to the now defunct power plant at Chernobyl, the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster. They were there February 21st to March 31st of this year, and they had their troops stationed. But those Russian troops were not equipped to deal with spent uranium, nor trained in the stringent safety standards required to run a power plant. Stationed there without proper protective equipment and safe handling training, these soldiers may and likely will have ill health or early deaths in the years to come. Currently, Russian troops are around the area of Ukraine's 4 power plants at Zaporizhzhia, the largest nuclear facility in Europe, indeed the 10th largest in the world, and it has 6 reactors. Now, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, has warned that a missile strike on the plant intentionally or accidentally could have grave consequences. The director of the IAEA reiterated his call to establish a nuclear safety and security protection zone around the nuclear power plant. He described the precarious situation at the plant caused by weeks of shelling in the area, which has damaged vital power infrastructure and prompted operators to put the last reactor into shutdown. And he stated, "This situation is untenable, and we are playing with fire. We cannot continue the situation where we are one step away from a nuclear accident. The safety of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is hanging by a thread." Well, what are the solutions? After Mr. Gross and the IAEA wrote their report on their inspection of the plant, initial consultations resulted in the Ukraine and Russia working to establish a protection zone around the plant. But you have to be clear of what these zones actually refer to. Zone 1, a primary zone, covers 10-mile radius of immediate damage. Zone 2 is a 50-mile radius of radioactivity that could contaminate water supplies, food supplies, and livestock. But even if there is an accident or deliberate destruction at this plant, despite incredibly widespread damage, it would not result in the end of the world. So our part is to continue to speak out for peace and encourage the end of armed conflicts around the world. And also, we must continue to transition to alternative forms of energy, such as geothermal, solar, wind, and wave generation. I know that some of you are familiar with a writer, Yuval Noah Harari, and he has written something that's on, actually it's on YouTube, about the fact that if the entire planet looked at GDP and put 2% of all GDP towards alternative energy, we could do it. So that's a wonderful solution, and at some point, hopefully you'll have a chance to see it on the YouTube video. Now I come to the biggie, and this is the one that I think most people worry about the most, and that's climate change. We know that climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns, and that some of these shifts are natural due to variations in the solar cycle. But since the 1800s, human activities have been the main driver of climate change, mainly due to burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. Fossil fuels burned generate greenhouse gas emissions that act like a blanket wrapping the earth, trapping the heat sun, and raising temperatures. Examples of greenhouse emissions that cause climate change include carbon dioxide and methane from using gasoline for vehicles, coal for heating buildings, and clearing land and forests also releases carbon dioxide. Landfills for garbage are a major source of methane emission, and I would add that methane from animals from industrial farming and the overuse of fertilizers is also part of that conversation. So human use is the main problem in climate change. Our Earth is now hotter than it has been in 2 million years, and we are seeing and experiencing the consequences of that climate change with intense droughts, unbearable heat, water scarcity, severe fires, rising sea levels, flooding, molten polar ice, catastrophic storms, and declining biodiversity. We have only to look at the tragedy of climate change in Pakistan, where 1/3 of their landmass is underwater, affecting 33 million people. This is real, and it is a present danger. With that climate change is also attached overpopulation. Overpopulation crowds out other animals, insects, flora, and land. And we can see the proof by looking at these numbers. It took over 2 million years of the Earth's population to grow to 1 billion people at 1800. By 1930, we had 2 billion people. By 1974, we had 4 billion people. We're now in 2022, and we are just under 8 billion people and expected to surpass that number in November. Some say that overpopulation is nothing to worry about, that all we have to do is figure out ways to produce more food. But it does contribute to climate change and the environmental degradation of habitat loss, deforestation, land, water, and air pollution, soil degradation, and excessive greenhouse emissions, and ocean acidification, which is damaging our coral reefs, marine habitats, and animals. I looked at a spot called Mindset Eco, and they talked about some solutions with overpopulation. And what they found was 6. One is the education of women and girls to reduce birth rates. Study after study shows that when women are educated, birth rates go down. And also to support education and access to family planning. Did you know that 40% of pregnancies around the world are unplanned and unintended, and that this will result in 85 million births per year? We need to make contraceptives readily and easily accessible and available. The other thing we need to do is to invest and support responsible and innovative agriculture, as agriculture accounts for 80% of global deforestation, biodiversity loss, habitat loss, soil and water pollution. And just consider the destruction of the Amazon rainforest, our old growth trees here in Canada, Indonesian palm oil production leading to the destruction of forest and animal habitats, to name a few. But we can grow food differently. And now we're going to watch a film about what the Netherlands has been able to do. Ed, can you please put on the video?
If you want to feed the world in 2050, then the next 40 years we need to produce the same amount of food as we did over the last 8,000 years. And that gives a little bit an indication of the pressure on the food system. We just face a huge challenge with a growing population, with a change in consumption behavior, with the climate crisis. How do you secure your food production? The real secret is the sustainable production. It should be with less inputs, less fertilizer, less pesticides, less water. It needs to be sustainable, otherwise we will destroy our planet. Yeah.
The security of the food system is one of the world's most pressing challenges. But the story of how this small country became an unexpected food superpower might just have some answers for how we tackle it. Consider this. If everyone on Earth ate the diet of the average American, that would require all the habitable land to be used for agriculture, and we'd still be 38% short. And that's right now. What do we do when there are 2 billion more people? Well, the key is more exciting than it sounds, and that's efficiency. Basically, how do we produce a lot more on the land we're already using and do it using a lot fewer natural resources?
When it comes to sustainable agriculture, one country has seemed to crack the code. Bolstered by a national commitment to produce twice the amount of food with half the resources, the Netherlands has become the world's #2 food exporter.
There was a very close collaboration between the government, science organizations and the industry. And they started out of a common interest. So they say, okay, yeah, we want to go for sustainable production, but everybody was aligned.
Everyone involved in the system was aligned and embraced innovation to reach that shared goal, and that has driven efficiency on a level unmatched anywhere else in the world. If there's one place that approach is most clear, it's in their unrivaled greenhouse growing operations.
There's a very nice example about tomato, which really gives a good insight in how we want to produce our food in a sustainable way. So if you produce tomatoes in an open field situation in Spain, then you will end up at the end of the growing season with 4 kilograms per square meter. If you do this in a high-tech greenhouse in the Netherlands at the moment, you will end up with 80 kilograms per square meter, which is 20 times more. But the best part of the story is that the 80 kilograms of tomatoes, we do it with 4 times less water compared to in an open field situation. And water is one of the big challenges that we face. We just had a cup of coffee. Do you know how many liters of water were needed to produce that cup of coffee? Rough guess.
10.
150. So high technology offers really a possibility of producing a lot of food per square meter in a sustainable way.
The Dutch lead the world in tomato yield while using a fraction of the water that other countries use. But it's not just tomatoes. Measured by yield per square mile, they're the world leader in the production of chilies and green peppers and cucumbers. Number 5 for potatoes, onions, and carrots. The list goes on. But the bottom line is they've been able to get so much out of so little.
If we are able to produce 80 times more with 4 times less water, that's great. It's great news, I think.
Most people know that greenhouses allow a grower to tweak every little thing. But the Netherlands is taking it to the next level. They've perfected the greenhouse as the ideal environment to continuously test and implement all kinds of ways to optimize growth. From things as simple as testing what hues of LED lights can increase pest resistance and improve nutritional value, to things as crazy as moth-killing drones.
So we're at the moment we don't have any products who can control actually the moths, and finally they will produce caterpillars, and those caterpillars can do a lot of harm to many different crops. Well, that drone is able to detect the moth, also to see how it's flying, and then with its wings, propellers, it will crush actually the moth.
Wow.
There's a relentless drive towards innovation to create better and more efficient growing techniques. They've even started taking the human touch completely out of it. Some of the latest tech relies on AI to learn plant behavior and constantly adjust conditions without any input from a farmer.
For example, what we're testing in this compartment is a climate computer. So we have different sensors, and it's actually, we measure the plant activity. And based on the plant activity, the computer is actually controlling the whole climate by itself.
Ultimately, the key to solving our global food challenge isn't just in relying on super efficient food producers to carry the weight for everyone else. It's learning from and adopting that technology. At the World Horti Center, you see that effort firsthand in an ongoing experiment. They've built basically a greenhouse within a greenhouse. Inside the larger structure, they're able to replicate any climate on Earth to figure out what modifications need to be made to realize the same yields they're getting in the Netherlands and any other country on Earth.
We have a cooperative project going on with Colombia, and we can in fact we can emulate the current climate conditions in Colombia, put their crop in and see how crop behaves under the circumstances that we have in Colombia. We can totally flip the seasons around. We can make it a sunny day on Christmas. We can close the curtains on a sunny day and make it completely dark. I think in the long run, the future of the Netherlands should not be to be a producer for the rest of the world. We should be a developer for the rest of the world. We are the country that will export our knowledge on creating production facilities all over the world.
Innovation starts really by bringing all these networks together. In the world we live nowadays, you need to link up with other people. You can't do it on your own. We need to produce more, we need to do it with less inputs, and we need to do it better.
Thanks for watching. If you like the future of food, stay tuned for our new series, Future of City.
Thank you. Isn't that exciting? Just think about all the things that are going on. We have people that are doing urban gardening. We have people that are planting trees. We have plants that are called resurrection plants that are being placed in places in desert, along desert edges. So there are many, many steps that people are taking to grow food differently that are very, very positive. We often hear that term, consume less, consume better, choose sustainable sources. You know, wealthy countries like Canada, we consume more per capita than any underdeveloped country that has higher population than we do. So we need to think about that. And many of us already do. We think about what we're consuming. We think about the kinds of food we're eating, what we're buying, the clothes we're wearing, how to be more eco-friendly. So if you're researching your products and those companies that supply them, you can support the ones that put the environment first. And the big thing that we continue to deal with, number 5, is choosing renewable energy resources. We know that fossil fuels are a huge problem. They degrade natural resources, and the using of them generates massive water pollution, land degradation, and air pollution. So support renewable energy where you can. Part of it could be policies that we vote on, write-ins, investing in the industries that we believe in, or simply choosing to use something when it becomes available in our area. There's been a lot of talk recently, I'm going to thank Lorna for this, about heat pumps as a source of energy. And the number 6 thing that we can do is participate in reducing waste and pollution. You know, those things that we would do. Refuse plastics where we can. Select biodegradable materials. This one I'm still adjusting to, going back to bar soaps and using shampoo bars that don't require plastic packaging. And choose items that are made from recycled materials. And sell or swap or give away things that you don't need. I have shared a few things about world event scenarios, past ones, present threats, and the changes that we will make going forward. Pandemics, nuclear war accidents, climate change, and overpopulation are activities that are detrimental to the humankind. There's no doubt about it. And climate change is clearly the number 1 problem for our planet. But I can't help thinking that a species that can direct the James Webb Space Telescope to a place 1 million miles from Earth and see galaxies with it that are 13.8 billion light years away absolutely can solve the problems of pandemics, nuclear wars, accidents, terrorism, climate change, and overpopulation. If enough of us humans decide that things will change, they will. It may not happen overnight or next year, or even in the next decade, but it will happen. Is the end of the world upon us? No, not if we combine efforts of the world community and make our voices heard. We cannot underestimate what we are capable of doing. I enjoy reading Twitter, and one of my favorite people that I follow on Twitter is Mike Hadema. He's a Greenpeace activist, and he's always showing video clips about energy alternatives around the planet. One he showed was about solar-powered parking lots. Another initiative he showed was China building the world's first forest city to tackle air pollution with 1 million plants, 40,000 trees, and thousands of jobs. One of Mike's favorite sayings is, "We have solutions. Let's implement them." I couldn't agree more. The choices that we make day to day, the causes, initiatives, and industries that we support make all the difference. And we can do that. And this allows us to fulfill our Unitarian principles, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience." We are not living in the end of days. We are living in the days of correction. And I say amen to that.